That temporary restraining order issued by a federal judge expired today, and officials estimate there are still about 400 homeless people living in tents like this along the river trail. At one point, that population soared to more than 1,000. This homeless encampment stretches 3 miles down to the 5 freeway near Angel Stadium. Homeless advocates took the issue to federal court over the county's plans to evict, arguing there isn't enough room in shelters. As part of the agreement in federal court to allow the cleanup to continue today, the county is offering 30-day motel vouchers and other services, including transportation.
What happens at the end of 30 days? That's something to think about.
Well, what do you think will happen?
There'll be a lot of people on the streets, on bus benches and parks.
The county is also expected to add 700 to 800 more beds for temporary housing. Hundreds gathered their things and got ready to leave today.
But we're here today to sign up for the list and see where they're going to take us. Some people said Motel 6, some people said Ken. We don't know exactly.
This comes as LA County is struggling to house its homeless population. A report by the LA Homeless Services Authority shows the homeless population is growing much faster than the supply of new housing, despite 2 measures passed by voters in 2016 and 2017, providing hundreds of millions of dollars for homeless services. Sheriff's officials started the cleanup here along the river trail at Taft and Ball. They're not sure exactly how long it's going to take, but they say that the river trail should return to normal.
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk more about California. I did a video about them maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'll link to that video in the description box below. I talked about the 51st state of New California. They want to break away from the coastal liberal elites that dominate the entire state, and San Francisco Bay Area, also LA County. You're talking about very small regions of the state that are highly populated with a high density. They control the entire state just from there. And it's unfair because it's a big state and the needs of certain places, like you're talking about way far up north, like in the proposed state of Jefferson, also way out far to the east, close to the Nevada border, the Arizona border. These places require different things. It's not the same as LA or San Francisco. And even in LA and San Fran, they have severe problems. You're talking about high crime, high homelessness, a big gap in, poverty and wealth. Like in LA, for example, you can have a neighborhood where it's total abject poverty, and then down the street, you can have Hollywood stars living. It's a big mess in California. A lot of it is due to the governance. Like I was saying, you got these small regions determining what's good for the rest of the entire state. The crazy taxes. California routinely has above $3 a gallon for gas. I've not seen that since early Obama administration. Maybe I'm kind of exaggerating, but where I'm at right now in Tennessee, I see nothing like that. I see gas right around $2.25, $2.35, maybe $2.50, and that's crazy expensive. I've not seen anything like $3.30 like you see in California. And then you're talking about the school systems pushing transgenderism on 5 and 6-year-old little boys and girls. You're talking about the sanctuary status of this state, which allows monsters that killed Jamil Shaw Jr. and also Kate Stanley to roam free. Repeat offender illegal immigrants are being able to just find home in California with no problems. They can do whatever they want to do. It's a big mess. And the governance is causing problems that impact not only just your things you can measure as far as your poverty, your crime, also just the condition of people, the demoralization of people. And you see the result of that right over my left-hand shoulder. It reads, national disgrace, community fights back as California overrun by homelessness, human waste, yes, human waste, feces, doo-doo, and needles. Now, you saw the video before I started rolling, so you pretty much have seen what the environment is like, but in case you need a reminder, that is it right there. This is Orange County, California. This is not a third world country. This is not somewhere in some remote village. This is California, right by Disneyland. And the article reads, the specter of homeless encampments steadily expanding across the downtown streets of San Diego, LA, and San Francisco bringing with them a public health crisis, yes, like hepatitis A, which has been in an outbreak in California right now, has one Southern California community taking tough action to dismantle a 2-mile-long camp just a short drive from Disneyland. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I've seen poverty. Right now, I'm in Appalachia. I've been in West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee. I've been at North Carolina. I've seen poverty, parts of far western Virginia, but I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen homeless camps. Now, some would say that's because of California having very good weather. I understand, but still, who wants to live like that? And the crime in these places are very high. The crime, the conditions, it's like a third world type of environment in sunny California. That's not the way to live just because you have quote unquote good weather, but I digress. In a departure from the approach taken by other local governments in the state, officials in Orange County, California have started to clear out the camp by moving occupants and hauling away literally tons of trash and hazardous waste. I mean, they got to do that because you're right by Disneyland. You are having to deal with the people that are surrounded by all kind of things that can injure them. The human waste harbors all kind of disease. It attracts all kind of rodents that are also going to spread the disease. Then you're talking about needles. I mean, if you step on the needle, it could be a wrap. As far as I know, most diseases are bloodborne. So if they get oxygenated, they die. But in the needle, it's going to be preserved because there's no oxygen coming in, right? You're only able to remove what's in the contents by stepping on it, pricking it, whatever. So if you have a little girl and you're taking her to the park, to Disneyland or whatever, and somehow, some way, one of these people from this camp happens to mosey on up there and they want to shoot heroin or whatever they want to do and leave the noodle right there in the ground in the walkway and nobody sees it to pick it up and your little girl steps on it, she has to go to the hospital immediately. She needs to go to the ER because you don't know what's going on with that needle. It could be HIV AIDS. It could be hepatitis. It could be all kind of other diseases that she does not want and that may kill her. Back to the article. It's becoming a part of the permanent landscape in those communities, and there is no way we're going to allow Orange County land that is supposed to be used by residents to be occupied by the homeless, said Todd Spitzer, who sits on the Orange County Board of Supervisors. Now, one thing I got to say, I have to ask is, are these just random people that come from all over the country, or are they residents of Orange County? Did they grow up there? Because one might say California, you got a lot of actors that are failed. They have nowhere to really live. Actors, entertainers, singers, whatever the case may be. But does it even matter? How is something like this even possible? I don't really understand. Trash trucks and contractors and hazmat gear. Yes, hazmat gear. You're talking about these camps. You never know what's going on. You got human waste, hypodermic needles. You also may have chemicals used to cook, drugs like methamphetamine, etc. Have descended on the camp and so far removed 250 tons, yes, 250 tons of trash, 1,100 pounds of human waste, and 5,000 hypodermic needles. This is in one camp in a 2-mile stretch. Imagine all the other camps around California and the nation for that matter. But the effort hasn't been without controversy as homeless advocates, the ACLU, and a federal judge have all weighed in on the fate of some 700 people evicted from their home along the Santa Ana River next to Angel Stadium of Anaheim and a few miles from Disneyland outside LA. Now, here's my question. I mean, what home? Like when you say evicted from their home, it ain't like they signed a lease or something like that. It just happens to be where they were staying. It doesn't mean that it was their home. If I just pop my car in a parking lot and I live right there, I mean, is the parking lot my home? Did I get evicted? Like if they say, okay, you got to leave from the parking lot right here. Did I get evicted from my home or was I told to move? This is not my home. This is somebody else's private property, public property, whatever. It's not mine. Spitzer, whose district includes the Encampment, has battled the advocates since last fall when the decision was first made to close the camp. The ACLU and others filed a federal civil rights lawsuit to stop this, and several states have been sued until last week when the final go-ahead was granted. Now, here's my question. Why is the ACLU saying that they should stay there? For what reason? I don't understand. This is inhumane living. This is not how Americans should be living. They should be fighting for, quote unquote affordable housing. They should be fighting for taxes to be reduced. They should be fighting for California to become a more affordable state, and a state that does not allow the illegal immigrant population to come in and do whatever they want to do at the expense of Americans. They shouldn't be saying, okay, yeah, let's have them stay in filth, human waste, needles, crime, all kind of stuff like that. It doesn't make any sense. And then you have folks that are out there who are mentally ill, that need treatment, and need to go to the hospital. We should be fighting to get them some assistance as far as how to get out of the situation rather than saying let them stay there. I don't get it. For those being evicted, a mediation with U.S. District Court Judge David Carter offered the choice of a bed in a shelter or a month-long motel voucher, medical aid, and drug treatment, job training, storage for their belongings, and housing for their pets at the county animal shelter. I mean, that right there, that's really going above and beyond to me. So I don't see why the ACLU will even be upset about that. Maybe the ACLU was able to get that done because it could have just been one thing where they say, okay, we're going to tear it down. I don't care where you got to go, but you got to get up out of here. And then they come and say, well, we want them to stay. So it's like, okay, rather than saying they're going to stay or they're just going to leave with nothing, let's have them be able to transition into the next part of their life. We'll give you X, Y, and Z, but you got to be out. To me, that's more than fair, more than I would do if it was me. So far, 544 people have been moved to shelters and motel rooms, and approximately 100 remain at the riverbed. Crews counted 207 tents, but it is unclear if they are occupied. Here's a quote from Todd Spitzer. It says, that isn't going to happen in our county. It's not going to be our Skid Row. Well, newsflash, it already is Skid Row, or at least it was. They're trying to make it not be Skid Row, but Skid Row is much bigger. I think it's like 5,000 people that live there in Skid Row. It's really a problem over there in LA. But Skid Row and this right here are not the only encampments like this in California. They exist everywhere. Maybe not to the scale of what you see here or in Skid Row, but they do exist behind Walmarts, behind, closed businesses. They do exist. But one option is not negotiable. The homeless cannot move back to the Santa Ana River channel, which is paved shoulders where residents used to walk and bike. The river, which runs from the mountains into the sea, is home to much of Orange County's groundwater and empties between pricey Newport and Huntington beaches. The beach has been closed often over the years due to high bacteria levels. Now, it ain't hard to tell why, because when you have the homeless encampment right there on the bed of the river, and then you got people with human waste, all kind of stuff, it's going to have runoff that goes right in the river, and it's going to impact the groundwater, and it's also going to impact beaches so people can't swim. So, no, they can't go back right there because that's just a hazard health-wise to everybody that has to be, part of their whole ecosystem. Officials in the county are mindful of how these camps have expanded in other major California cities. Like I said, it's not just Orange County. It ain't just, Skid Row in Los Angeles. It's everywhere in California and the West Coast. I think they have one in Washington or several in Washington because of the heroin problem. They're all over the place in the West, but especially in California because of the weather. And here's part of the camp right here. I'm not sure if this is an old one or a new one, but you see the LAA sign and a camp right underneath it. That is crazy. LA's homeless problem has now spread past Skid Row to much of downtown. The amount of feces littering the streets of San Diego, LA, and San Francisco has led to a hepatitis outbreak. Like I said earlier, hepatitis A has been a problem in California that spread throughout the state's homeless communities, infecting 694 people. It skipped Orange County. Well, hey, not for long, or hopefully they're able to keep the eviction up. They're able to keep these encampments from coming up, because once you have a lot of people and a lot of people that are engaging in just really kind of gross activities, you're going to have disease that spreads. This is how the plague spread, when you have a lot of people in dense environments that live in an unclean way. Spitzer singled out for criticism LA and San Francisco. San Francisco feces problem is so bad that a website now exists to warn residents of which streets to avoid. That's crazy. You got to have a website to tell you, hey, don't go right there because it's, it's doo-doo on the street. That's just really out of control. And I heard that it's not a crime to do that. Like if you urinate on the street or defecate on the street, it's not a crime to do that in San Francisco. If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments below. But I have heard something like that about New York Do not be surprised if you have these homeless issues in New York. The only reason why it wouldn't be as bad as California is because of the weather. You're talking about brutal winters, and you're also talking about limited open space. LA raised taxes last year in order to build housing for the homeless and has started a roving toilet program. What is a roving toilet? Not quite sure. Are they going to just have like porta potties everywhere so people don't doo-doo on the street? That isn't going to happen in our county. It's not going to be our Skid Row, Spitzer Valley. We need to be compassionate and empathetic. I'm writing checks all over the place, but I'm not going to intermingle the population with property owners. Are you kidding? Hey, I like that. That's, hopefully he sticks to his guns and doesn't really waver off of that point. Reports from the scene in Orange County largely reflected an orderly move. Carter called it a great credit to transparency, humanity, according to the LA Times. One advocate for the homeless told the same newspaper that they heard reports of people who didn't get food vouchers or couldn't get to their destinations, but generally described the move as offering, quote, better living conditions, unquote. Yeah. Stuff like this can happen in the United States. I mean, you got veterans out there living like that. It's really a mess. But we're worried about getting people over here illegally. We're worried about the so-called dreamers. What about Americans? That guy dreams too. My man right here probably has a dream. So, what about him? Like, let's take care of people like this first. Let's fix this problem first before we talk about bringing in more people that we can't take care of right now. We can't take care of our own. So how are we going to take care of more? It doesn't make any sense. Approximately 500,000 people in the U.S. are homeless, with California accounting for 25%. So let's get this straight. California just by itself has 1/4 of all the U.S.'s homeless population. That's really a shame. The largest number of any state, according to a survey by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Orange County has 4,792 homeless. A shame. But I think that number, how big it looks, Skid Row by itself has more, if I'm not mistaken. An LA Times editorial over the weekend called the problem in the city a national disgrace. Spitzer blames the problem on two issues: legislation signed by Democratic Governor Jerry Brown, yes, over the past several years that has ended the penalties for drug use, possession, and petty crimes to where police often don't bother making arrests, and the change in the law so that treatment is no longer forced for drug abuse or mental health issues. This is why I say all the time that drugs are a bad issue in America, because they're going to create problems like this. When you say that, drugs should be decriminalized or whatever, you're going to get these homeless encampments. You're going to get Skid Row. You're going to get these places where they come and use their drugs. The police can't break it up, because what are you going to do? What are you going to arrest them on? What, trespassing? They'll be right back to the same place the next night doing the same thing. And when you keep arresting them over and over again, you're not actually helping the problem. You got to put them in jail for a minute in order for them to maybe not do that, maybe be a deterrent, do something. And then the forced drug treatment, how is that a bad thing? Even the people that say that I'm wrong as far as wanting to not have drugs be legalized, they would say that treatment is an option. So how does that make any sense? Maybe they say they don't want to do anything that's going to force someone to do what they don't want to do. But at the end of the day, we have to suffer as Americans that don't use drugs, that are not out there living that kind of lifestyle. It's not fair. This week, I guess that's Spitzer, wrote a letter to Jerry Brown urging him to declare a state of emergency over the homeless issue and reverse previous forced treatment laws. Quote, when I was a prosecutor, the law behind possession was a felony, said Spitzer, a former deputy district attorney. We would use the hammer under the law of a felony. We would force someone into treatment, and upon successful treatment, the felony will be dismissed. Now, that is fair right there. I don't see how that could be any more fair. People that are against so-called drug prohibition would clap at this. They'll say, okay, let's get them treatment and let's make it to where it has to be treatment. Okay, rather than just letting them go back out there or just throwing them in the jail and not doing any kind of rehab, let's get them treatment. And if they don't relapse, then you get their record expunged. That's totally fair. Now look at what we have as a result of the ridiculous, short-sighted liberalization of drug use. I couldn't say no better myself, and I think that, as I close, would be the solution to all of this. Let's get the laws back to where they're supposed to go. I mean, you can't just say that stuff like this. you can't say it's okay. You can't say that nothing should be done for that. You can't just sweep it under the rug. It's here. This is America. This is what's happening nowadays. You can't avoid it anymore. Let's get to some real solutions. Don't just say, oh, well, people that use drugs is not really, it's victimless crime. No, this kind of environment is not conducive for anything going forward. You may look past it. You may not be in that situation, but you got kids living there. You got pets. I mean, it's really just a mess. Hopefully they're able to fix this in Orange County, and not just there, but also LA with Skid Row, which has been around for years and years and years. Also, San Francisco Bay Area. They want to talk about, it's the home of all these tech companies or whatever, but they also have a dark side. It's a lot of homeless living there that have nothing and nobody to help. So what do you think? Do you think that the idea that Spitzer had, which was the forced rehab, the felonies, tighten up the laws, would that be a good solution? Do you think that having more people that have conservative mind states in California will be a good solution? I heard Stacey Dash is running. Maybe that might be a solution. As I close, I want to say this. Some would say that it's impossible to get a conservative in California, but I beg to differ. I think that the California Democratic Party right now is having a lot of issues. They are fragile at the moment. People are getting fired left and right. People are being urged not to run. I think Dianne Feinstein is not getting support from the Democratic Party in California. So maybe, just maybe, there's an opening there that would allow for Republicans to come in. If not a Republican, at least somebody that is more, is more conservative, that is a Democrat. But hopefully what happens is that California breaks apart, because stuff like this kind of thing is not going to, it's not going to work out if it keeps up. And the origin of it can be linked right back to the government that's there, that are creating policies that allow this kind of thing to persist. But whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.